ARACHNE, the price of hubris. Among the many myths involving Athena, none has captured the imagination quite as completely as the story of Arachne, the mortal weaver who dared to challenge the goddess to a contest. This tale, preserved most fully by the Roman poet Ovid in his Metamorphoses, speaks to themes of pride and punishment, of artistic excellence and divine jealousy, and offers one of the most vivid examples of transformation myth in all of classical literature. Arachne was a young woman from the region of Lydia in Asia Minor, daughter of Idmon, a dyer famous for his purple fabrics. She had no royal blood, no divine ancestry, no special claim to fame beyond one extraordinary gift. She was the most skilled weaver who had ever lived. From childhood, Arachne had shown remarkable talent at the loom, and as she grew, her skill developed to such a degree that people would travel from distant lands just to watch her work. Ovid describes the beauty of Arachne's artistry in loving detail. It was not merely that her finished products were beautiful, though they certainly were. It was the grace with which she worked, the elegant precision of her movements, the way her fingers seemed to dance across the threads. Nymphs would abandon their springs and groves to sit and watch Arachne weave, so enchanted were they by the sight of her craft. People began to say that surely Arachne must have been taught by Athena herself, for who else could have given her such skill? After all, Athena was the patron goddess of weaving, Athena Ergain, the goddess who had first taught mortals this craft. It seemed logical that the greatest mortal weaver must have received divine instruction. But Arachne, proud of her skill and perhaps foolishly confident, denied this. She claimed that her talent was entirely her own, born from her own practice and natural ability, owing nothing to divine instruction. Some sources emphasize that Arachne didn't merely deny having been taught by Athena. She actively boasted that her skill might even surpass the goddesses, that if they were to compete, she might win. This claim, this hubris, could not go unanswered. Hubris, excessive pride that challenged the gods, was perhaps the most serious moral failing in Greek thought. The gods jealously guarded their honor, their superiority over mortals, and challenges to that superiority invariably brought harsh consequences. Athena, hearing of Arachne's boasts, decided to give the girl a chance to recant. The goddess disguised herself as an old woman, bent with age, and approached Arachne. In this form, she gently advised Arachne to be more modest, to acknowledge the god's supremacy, to claim skill among mortals by all means, but not to set herself up as equal or superior to divine powers. The old woman suggested that Athena would surely forgive past boasts if Arachne would show proper respect going forward. But Arachne, young and prideful, refused. She was not dissuaded by the old woman's advice. Indeed, she became more defiant, openly challenging Athena to appear and compete with her if the goddess thought herself superior. "Let them have a contest," Arachne said, "and let everyone see whose skill was greater." At this, Athena dropped her disguise. The old woman's form fell away, revealing the goddess in her full glory, radiating divine light, terrible and beautiful. The nymphs who had gathered to watch Arachne work immediately fell to the ground in worship. Even Arachne herself seemed briefly awed. But the girl's pride quickly reasserted itself, and she stood her ground, meeting the goddess's gaze without flinching. Athena accepted the challenge, and the contest began. 2 looms were set up, and both goddess and mortal began to weave. Ovid devotes considerable space to describing the tapestries that each created, for the content of these weavings was as important as their technical quality. Athena's tapestry depicted the gods in all their glory and might, seated on high thrones, majestic and powerful. She wove the scene of her own contest with Poseidon for Athens, showing herself victorious through the gift of the olive tree. In the 4 corners of her tapestry, she wove cautionary scenes, mortals who had challenged the gods and been punished for their presumption. She showed Haemus and Rhodope, transformed into mountains for claiming to be Zeus and Hera. She showed the Pygmaean queen turned into a crane for daring to compete with the gods. Each corner scene reinforced the same message: challenging the gods brings disaster. Arachne's tapestry told a very different story. With equal skill, perhaps even greater artistry, Arachne wove scenes of the gods at their worst. She depicted Zeus's many seductions and deceptions: Zeus as a bull carrying off Europa, Zeus as a swan with Leda, Zeus as golden rain impregnating Danae. She showed Poseidon's violations, Apollo's pursuits of unwilling nymphs, and other tales of divine misconduct. Her tapestry exposed the gods' hypocrisy, their abuse of power, their treatment of mortal women as playthings for divine lust. This was not merely skilled weaving, it was commentary, criticism, even mockery. Arachne had created a work of art that questioned the gods' moral authority, that suggested their power did not equal virtue, that their demands for respect from mortals rang hollow when set against their own behavior. When both tapestries were complete, Athena examined Arachne's work carefully, looking for flaws, for any imperfection she could criticize, but there were none. Arachne's weaving was absolutely flawless, every thread in place, every scene perfectly rendered. As Ovid writes, even Athena's envy could find no fault with the work. Technically, Arachne had equaled or even surpassed the goddess. But the content of the tapestry, the challenge it represented, the mockery it contained, could not be tolerated. Athena's rage exploded. She tore Arachne's beautiful tapestry to shreds, ripping apart the scenes that had criticized the gods. Then she struck Arachne repeatedly with her shuttle, the wooden tool used in weaving, hitting the girl on the head again and again. Arachne, shocked by this violence, overcome with shame and despair at seeing her greatest work destroyed, could not bear it. She found a rope and hanged herself, choosing death over the humiliation and pain. But even in death, Arachne would find no peace. Athena, perhaps feeling some regret for driving the girl to suicide, or perhaps wanting to ensure that the punishment fit the crime, saved Arachne from death, but transformed her. She sprinkled Arachne with the juices of aconite, a poisonous herb associated with Hecate, goddess of magic and witchcraft. As the potion touched her, Arachne's body began to change. Her hair fell out, her nose and ears vanished. Her body shrank and twisted, becoming small and round. Her arms and legs elongated, becoming thin and spindly. Her fingers fused to her body, transforming into legs. Arachne became a spider, the Greek word for which is arachne, doomed to weave forever but never to create the grand tapestries of her youth, only the simple geometric webs that spiders make. This transformation was Athena's final word on the matter. Arachne had wanted to weave. She would weave for all eternity. She had challenged a goddess. She would spend her existence as something small and easily crushed, feared by many, welcome in no home. The punishment fit the crime, and it would serve as a warning to others who might consider similar hubris. The myth of Arachne and Athena has inspired countless interpretations and retellings. On its surface, it seems to be a straightforward cautionary tale about the dangers of pride, about the importance of respecting the gods and knowing one's place in the cosmic order. Arachne's skill made her arrogant. Her arrogance led her to challenge a goddess, and her challenge brought terrible punishment. The moral seems clear: be excellent if you can, but never claim to equal the gods. But the myth contains layers of complexity that have fascinated readers for millennia. Notice that Athena's rage seems to come not primarily from being equaled in skill, but from being challenged and criticized. Arachne's tapestry spoke uncomfortable truths about divine behavior, and truth is not always welcome, even or especially when it comes from powerless mortals. The destruction of Arachne's tapestry might be read as censorship, as the powerful silencing criticism they find inconvenient. From this perspective, Athena's reaction seems less like righteous punishment and more like a powerful being lashing out because their authority has been questioned. The transformation of Arachne becomes not a fitting punishment but an act of cruelty, turning a gifted artist into a creature capable only of the most basic craft, silencing her voice while forcing her to continue a diminished version of what she once excelled at. Ovid himself seems to invite this critical reading. His description of Arachne is sympathetic, emphasizing her humble origins and genuine skill. His description of Athena's tapestry is respectful, but also somewhat stiff, focused on divine power and glory. His description of Arachne's tapestry is more lively, more engaging, and while he does not explicitly praise Arachne's choice of subject, neither does he condemn it. The reader is left to form their own judgment about whether Athena's reaction was justified or excessive. The transformation into a spider also carries interesting symbolism. Spiders are associated with patience, with careful planning, with creating elaborate structures from simple materials. In some ways, spiders embody qualities that Athena herself represents: strategic thinking, careful construction, the creation of protective structures. The spider's web, though simple compared to a woven tapestry, is a marvel of engineering, precisely constructed to serve its purpose. Perhaps Athena, in transforming Arachne, was not purely punishing her, but was also, in a twisted way, honoring her skills, ensuring that she would continue to weave in a form suited to her diminished status. The myth also speaks to the complex relationship between teachers and students, between masters and those who learn from them. If Arachne had been taught by Athena, even indirectly through the general gift of craft knowledge that the goddess had given to humanity, then Arachne's skill reflected well on her divine teacher. But Arachne's refusal to acknowledge any debt, her insistence that her skill was entirely her own, insulted the teacher by denying the teacher's role in the student's success. In later art and literature, Arachne's story has been retold many times, with different emphases and different morals. Some retellings focus on the dangers of pride, others on the tragedy of an artist destroyed by jealous power. Modern feminist readings have sometimes reclaimed Arachne as a symbol of female artists speaking truth to power, creating work that criticizes those in authority despite knowing the risks. The myth also served as an origin story, explaining why spiders exist and why they weave webs. Ancient Greeks, looking at spiders spinning their intricate webs, could tell themselves that these creatures had once been a human woman, blessed and cursed with the compulsion to weave forever. It made the natural world part of the mythological world, connected the everyday observation of a spider in its web to the grand stories of gods and heroes. For Athena herself, the story is somewhat unflattering, showing the goddess at her most vindictive, least wise. But perhaps even this served a purpose in Greek religion, which did not portray the gods as perfectly moral beings, but as powerful forces with their own emotions, including jealousy, anger, and pride. Athena could be wise and just, as she was in most stories, but she could also be petty and cruel when her authority was challenged. The gods were complex, multifaceted, capable of both great good and great evil, and mortals had to navigate carefully in their interactions with divine powers, never forgetting that God's patience had limits, and their wrath was terrible.